Imagine you haven't eaten in 3 days. You're weak, your stomach hurts, even standing feels exhausting. Then you find food, but there's a problem. It's crawling with tiny insects, it smells strange. And when you get closer, you realize it's not something you'd normally put anywhere near your mouth. Your brain immediately says, don't eat it. But there's nothing else. No grocery store, no refrigerator, no delivery app, no backup meal waiting at home, just hunger. And the disgusting thing in front of you. Now be honest. How hungry would you have to become before you stopped caring that it was disgusting? Because this is where ancient survival gets uncomfortable. Some of the things humans learned to eat weren't just unusual. They were things many of us today would instinctively reject. And that tells us something disturbing about your own brain. The instinct that makes you say that's disgusting may be trying to keep you alive. But sometimes, survival required humans to fight that instinct. Imagine you've just helped bring down a large animal. You have meat, but the animal contains much more than meat, fat, organs, and inside the bones, marrow. You crack the bone open. Inside is a soft, greasy substance. A modern person might look at it and think, no thanks. But when calories are difficult to find, wasting part of an animal isn't necessarily an option. The part you would normally ignore can become valuable. And suddenly the question isn't, does this look appetizing? It's, does this keep me alive? That's an important difference. Because when food is everywhere, you can afford preferences. When food is scarce, preferences become expensive. But here's where things get even stranger. What if the food isn't just disgusting? What if it's moving? Imagine seeing tiny larvae crawling through a potential food source. Your first reaction probably isn't curiosity. It's, get it away from me. But insects, larvae, and other small creatures have been eaten by human populations in many parts of the world because they can provide useful nutrients. The point isn't that ancient humans simply ate anything they could find. They couldn't afford to. They had to learn what was actually usable, and that required something modern humans rarely have to practice, making decisions without certainty. You find something. You don't have a nutrition label. You don't have a laboratory. You don't have a food safety inspector. You have your senses, your memory, and knowledge passed down by other people. And sometimes, getting that decision wrong could have consequences, because the disgusting thing might be harmless, or it might make you sick. And you may have no way to know for certain. Think about the last time you smelled spoiled food. You probably didn't stop and calculate the danger. You just recoiled. Your brain says, don't eat that. That reaction is useful. Disgust can push us away from things associated with contamination, decay, and disease. Rotten food, feces, certain bodily fluids, things that might carry parasites or pathogens. Your brain doesn't need to prove they're dangerous first. It can simply say, stay away. And that's incredibly useful until you're starving. Because now two survival systems are fighting each other. Your hunger says, eat. Your disgust says, don't. And suddenly, the instinct protecting you from one danger could create another. Because refusing food means becoming weaker. And becoming weaker can make everything else harder. But there's an even darker problem. What if your disgust is actually correct? Imagine finding a dead animal. You're hungry. There's meat right there. But you don't know why the animal died. Was it hunted? Was it injured? Was it sick? How long has it been dead? You can't run a test. You can't Google it. You can't call a doctor. And you can't see many of the dangers that could be inside it. That's the nightmare of ancient survival. Something can look like food and still be dangerous. So humans couldn't simply learn to ignore disgust. They had to learn when to trust it. They watched. They remembered. They copied successful behaviors. They learned which plants were safe, which animals were dangerous, which foods could be prepared, which could be preserved, and which things were better left alone. That knowledge could spread through a group and eventually become tradition, which means one of the most important survival tools wasn't a weapon. It was information. And this is where the story changes. It's easy to imagine ancient humans as people who simply grabbed random things and ate them. But survival rewards the opposite. Imagine someone in your group discovers that a particular plant makes people violently ill. The next time someone reaches for it, you warn them. A child grows up hearing the warning, then teaches it to their own children. Nobody needs to understand bacteria. Nobody needs to know the chemistry. They just need to remember, don't eat that. That's how experience can become culture. And it means ancient humans weren't necessarily surviving because they were willing to eat disgusting things. They were surviving because they were learning which disgusting things were worth the risk. But there was another boundary humans sometimes crossed: blood. For many modern people, the sight of blood triggers an immediate reaction. You see it, your stomach tightens, you look away. But animal blood has been consumed in different human cultures throughout history. Why? Because survival changes the way you see resources. Something that looks like waste can contain nutritional value. And the same principle applies again and again. Use what you have. Waste less. Learn more. Adapt. But notice something important. None of this means ancient humans were fearless. They still had disgust. They still had fear. They still had preferences. They simply lived in environments where following those instincts wasn't always possible. And that's what makes the next realization so strange. Think about your kitchen. You open the refrigerator. Something smells wrong. You don't investigate. You don't think, maybe I can survive another 3 days if I eat. You throw it away. Then you open another container, or you drive to a store, or order food from your phone. You can afford to listen to your disgust. That's a luxury. For much of human history, rejecting a food source had a cost. Maybe you went hungry. Maybe you became weaker. Maybe tomorrow's journey became harder. Maybe the next opportunity to eat wouldn't come for hours or days. So disgust wasn't just an emotion. It could become a decision with consequences. And that reveals something about modern life we rarely think about. You don't just have more food than your ancestors. You have more opportunities to say no. So go back to that first scene. You're starving. There's food in front of you. It smells wrong. Your brain says, don't. Your body says, you need energy. You don't know whether the food is safe. You don't know when you'll find something else. And now you're forced to make a decision your modern life usually protects you from. Can you afford to be disgusted? That's the real story behind the disgusting things humans sometimes did to survive. Not that ancient people were primitive, not that they had no standards, and not that they simply ate anything. They survived by learning. Learning what could be eaten, learning what could be prepared, learning what could be preserved, learning what could kill them, and learning when survival was worth overriding an instinct that normally protected them. Your ancestors didn't survive because nothing disgusted them. They survived because they learned how to live with the things that did. And today, you can be disgusted, throw the food away, order something else, and never think about it again. Because you live in a world where survival rarely asks, how badly do you want to live? But that's not the only ancient survival system still hiding inside your brain. Because every night, when the lights go out, your mind starts playing a completely different game, and you may have been afraid of the wrong thing your entire life.